Carissa's heart slammed against her ribcage the moment she heard the thunder of motorbikes roaring down the deserted county road. She peered through the back window of her uncle's cabin, perched at the edge of an overgrown field. This was supposed to be a quiet weekend away, a chance for her to explore nature and train with her loyal German shepherd, Drake. 11 years old, with wide, curious eyes and a spirit braver than most her age, Carissa hadn't expected trouble. But the ominous growl of engines suggested otherwise. Drake lifted his head from his spot on the wooden floorboards, ears pricked and tail stiff. He was a canine rescue, meticulously trained by a retired police officer before landing in Carissa's life. In the handful of months they'd spent together, he had proven himself calm, fiercely protective, and intelligent in ways that felt almost human. But Carissa had only ever seen him practice commands on a training field. They had never faced real danger, until now. A swirl of dust enveloped the yard as the bikes came closer. Carissa's initial fear gave way to an odd mixture of defiance and alarm. She remembered her uncle's words, "If you don't feel safe, lock the door, call me, and keep Drake close." She quickly reached for her cell phone, only to remember there was no reception this far into the countryside. The landline inside the cabin was dead, an ongoing issue her uncle had meant to fix. The bikers, 3 of them, clad in ragged denim jackets and black boots, swerve into the driveway. Carissa watched from behind the window frame, hoping they'd just pass through. But they cut their engines in unison, as if they'd choreographed the move. One man, tall and wiry with a greasy ponytail, scanned the perimeter. His gaze raked over the cabin's front door, a twisted grin slithering across his face. Despite the terror that threatened to freeze her in place, Carissa forced herself to move. She twisted the lock on the back door and gestured for Drake to follow her into the narrow hallway. The faithful dog stepped silently, but tension radiated through his lean body. His ears stayed pinned upright, ready for a command. Carissa's mind raced. She pictured the old utility closet in the living room, the place she'd hidden a few times during storms. It wasn't much protection, but it beat standing out in the open. Before they made it halfway there, a tremendous crash echoed from the front of the cabin. The door shuddered, hinges rattling from the impact. Glass cracked in a side window. A moment later, harsh voices filtered inside, accompanied by a disquieting silence between their words, like they were savoring each step they took. Carissa pressed herself against the wall, Drake beside her, his breath hot against her arm. Her heart hammered so loudly she worried it might give them away. She had no idea what these men wanted, only that they meant her harm, and they didn't realize the dog at her side was a meticulously trained canine, ready to defend her if they got too close. She took a shaky breath. Time was running out. If they found her, it wouldn't end well. Carissa tightened her grip on Drake's collar and whispered, "Stay." The dog's tail gave one purposeful thump on the wooden floor. She knew at that moment that if it came down to it, Drake would fight with every ounce of skill he had. Carissa inched closer to the living room, bracing herself as she peered around the corner. The intruders, she could hear at least 2 distinct sets of footsteps, were rummaging through drawers, overturning the few pieces of furniture in the cabin. From her vantage point, she caught a glimpse of the tall one with the greasy ponytail kicking aside a coffee table, spewing curses under his breath. Another, bulkier man with a chain draped across his leather vest stood near the sofa, scanning the walls as if expecting treasure to reveal itself. Her lungs constricted with panic, but she remembered her uncle's words of advice about dealing with uncertain danger. If you can't escape, you need a plan. At this point, slipping past them and out the front seemed impossible. The men were blocking the main exit, and smashing her way through a window would only draw their attention. She silently motioned for Drake to crouch alongside her. He followed her gesture with a quiet discipline, nails clicking softly on the hardwood. She could feel his muscles tensed, every fiber of him vibrating with readiness. He was waiting for the one command that would unleash months of specialized training. Carissa's parents had been cautious about allowing her to keep such a dog, but her uncle had insisted. Better to have a guardian who knows his business than to rely on luck, he'd said. Now, that wisdom might prove to be a lifesaver. A loud bang shattered her thoughts. The front door slammed against the wall again, this time from the force of the third biker entering. A new voice, higher-pitched and agitated, filled the space. "Anyone here? I swear I saw movement." Carissa's heart sank. She inched back, searching for the utility closet. It was a small cupboard behind the living room. If she could just slip inside and close the door, maybe the darkness would hide her until the bikers gave up. But fate had other plans. She took one quiet step, then another, only to hit a loose floorboard with her heel. It creaked ominously, the sound magnified in the tense silence. Instantly, the rough voices froze. An eerie hush fell, like a held breath before a hurricane. A chilling laugh echoed. Footsteps pounded across the living room, growing louder. She heard one of them hiss, "Whoever's here, come out, or we'll tear this place apart." Carissa swallowed hard. She couldn't hide now. They were zeroing in on her position. Another step, and a large silhouette appeared at the corner. It was the bulky man with the chain, and his expression twisted when he saw a small figure. Just a girl, trembling in the hallway. Well, he jeered. "Isn't this a sweet surprise?" He lunged forward, intending to snatch her. Carissa stepped back, instinctively raising an arm to shield herself. But Drake surged in front of her, a low growl rolling through his chest. The man's sneer vanished. He hadn't expected resistance, let alone from a poised, powerful German shepherd. Carissa's pulse pounded. She had to think quickly. This wasn't a game. She remembered the single command that would unleash Drake's protective drive. Slowly, she raised her hand and spoke the word with quiet clarity, a word that Drake knew meant attack with purpose, but do no more harm than necessary. At the sound of Carissa's voice, Drake lunged at the bulky man with controlled ferocity. The dog latched onto the attacker's forearm, teeth gripping tight enough to make him howl in pain. He staggered backward, attempting to shake Drake off, but the German shepherd held firm, all the training in perfect, disciplined harmony. Carissa was trembling, yet determined. She darted behind Drake, using the momentary chaos to get some distance. The greasy-haired biker rushed forward, swearing at the top of his lungs. He hesitated only a fraction of a second before swinging a boot at Drake's side. Instantly, Drake released his grip on the first man and whirled to snap at the second, forcing the boot away mid-swing. The dog's strength and precision were more than either man had bargained for. Shouting erupted from all three intruders. Curses mingled with confusion. They clearly hadn't come prepared for a trained canine. Meanwhile, Drake's stance signaled unwavering focus, and Carissa could practically feel the power radiating from him. She pressed herself against the wall, every nerve tingling. Adrenaline slammed through her, but she had enough presence of mind to realize something crucial. The men were now pinned to the front door, uncertain whether to press the attack or flee. Seizing her chance, Carissa flung open the back door, letting a beam of late-afternoon sunlight spill into the cabin. She called Drake's name as loudly as she could muster. The dog pivoted, barking a command of his own, part warning, part triumphant challenge. The bikers jostled each other in confusion, torn between chasing the fleeing girl and contending with the lunging shepherd. Carissa sprinted outside, bare feet pounding on the grass as she aimed for the nearest cover, a large oak tree that she and Drake had often used as a practice boundary in their training sessions. She glanced over her shoulder just in time to see the bikers realize their advantage was gone. The bulky man's arm dripped blood onto the cabin floor, his chain clattering noisily as he tried to regroup. The man with the greasy ponytail cursed again, and for a moment, looked ready to chase after Carissa. But Drake stood in the threshold, his muzzle pulled back in a snarl that promised absolute havoc if anyone came near. "Forget this," the third biker spat, kicking an empty beer can across the porch. "She's not worth it." The tallest one, still nursing a battered arm, glared at Carissa from a distance. His pride was stung. He opened his mouth to threaten something vile. But the sight of Drake, poised for another attack, seemed to crush whatever bravado he had left. With a final sneer, he turned on his heel and limped toward the motorcycles. The others followed, shouting angry slurs that only amplified their humiliation. Carissa watched as the trio revved their engines and fled down the dirt road, disappearing behind swirling clouds of dust. Drake trotted to her side, panting from exertion but otherwise uninjured. Carefully, she placed a trembling hand between his ears. Despite everything, relief washed over her in a heavy wave. She sank to her knees in the tall grass, burying her face in Drake's fur. All the terror she'd been holding inside finally broke free. Tears spilled onto the dog's coat as she whispered shaky thanks for the single ally she knew she could always count on. After a few moments, she became aware of Drake's steady, comforting breath. Drawing in one of her own, she stood and turned toward the battered cabin. There would be repairs to make, police to call once she could get a signal, and family to reassure. But for now, in the hush of the waning sun, only one thought mattered. She was safe, and the reason stood loyally by her side, a silent guard dog she'd never take for granted again. The end.